when a police dog sat beside a girl on the street. No one could have imagined what he was waiting for would stun the officers to their core. What started as a routine patrol quickly turned into a moment that would change department procedures forever. The officers couldn't understand the K-9's bizarre behavior until a shocking revelation made everything clear. What this highly trained German shepherd sensed about the little girl left everyone speechless. This is the extraordinary story of how one dog's instincts revealed something no human could see. It was supposed to be just another Friday night patrol for Officer James Wilson and his K-9 partner, Rex. For 3 years, they had worked the downtown streets together, building a reputation for textbook precision and reliability. Rex, a 4-year-old German shepherd with a distinguished service record, had never once disobeyed a command. Until tonight. As they turned down Madison Avenue, Rex suddenly tensed. His ears perked forward, and without warning, he yanked hard on his lead, pulling Officer Wilson toward a narrow alley between 2 buildings. "Rex, heel," Wilson commanded firmly. But for the first time ever, the dog completely ignored him. Heart racing, Wilson followed his partner down the alley, flashlights sweeping the shadows. That's when they spotted her. A small girl, no more than 7 years old, huddled against the brick wall. She wore only a thin jacket despite the November chill, her face partially hidden behind tangled brown hair. But what happened next left Wilson completely baffled. Instead of maintaining a safe distance as he'd been trained, Rex immediately sat down beside the girl, pressing his warm body against hers. When Wilson tried to approach, Rex let out a low, protective growl toward his own handler. But what made this highly trained police dog abandon years of discipline was something no one could have predicted. Officer Wilson radioed for backup, his voice tight with confusion. "I've got a juvenile, female, approximately 7 years old, and my K-9 is... well, he's not responding to commands. Something's wrong." Within minutes, 2 more patrol cars arrived, their lights painting the alley in flashes of blue and red. Officer Elena Ramirez approached first, an experienced child welfare specialist. "Let me try," she said, crouching down several feet from the girl. "Hi there, sweetheart. My name's Elena. Can you tell me your name?" The girl remained silent, pressing herself tighter against the wall, eyes wide with fear. But remarkably, she kept one small hand buried in Rex's fur, as if drawing strength from his presence. When Ramirez moved closer, the girl flinched visibly. Yet she didn't pull away from Rex. In fact, she seemed to lean into him. The K-9 remained perfectly still, his body language protective rather than threatening. "I've never seen anything like this," Wilson whispered to Sergeant Brooks, who had just arrived on scene. "He's acting like he knows her." They tried 3 times to separate Rex from the girl. Each attempt ended the same way, with Rex planting himself firmly between the officers and the child, his normally obedient demeanor replaced by unmovable determination. "We need to get her to the station," Brooks finally decided. "Both of them. Something isn't right here." As they carefully guided the unlikely pair toward the patrol car, the girl finally spoke, just 5 quiet words that sent chills down Officer Wilson's spine. "He knows I'm broken inside." What the officers didn't know was that Rex wasn't just being friendly, he was desperately trying to tell them something. The fluorescent lights of the police station cast harsh shadows across the interview room. The girl, who had finally whispered that her name was Lily, sat hunched in an oversized chair, Rex still faithfully by her side. Despite department protocol strictly forbidding K-9 units in interview rooms with minors, Sergeant Brooks had made an exception. Every attempt to separate them had resulted in Lily retreating further into silence, and Rex growing increasingly agitated. "I've called Child Protective Services," Officer Ramirez said quietly to Wilson in the hallway. "They're sending someone, but it's Friday night. Could be a couple of hours." Wilson nodded, his eyes never leaving the window to the interview room. "Something about this doesn't add up. Rex is one of our best trained dogs. He's never broken protocol like this. 17 commendations in 3 years," Ramirez remarked, scrolling through Rex's service record on her tablet. "Detection rates in the top percentile of the entire K9 program. No behavioral incidents whatsoever." She looked up, brow furrowed. "Until tonight." Inside, Officer Jacobs was gently trying to get more information from Lily. "Can you tell me where you live, sweetheart? Is there someone we can call?" Lily's small fingers tightened in Rex's fur. "I can't go back there," she whispered. So softly they almost missed it. Her eyes, large and haunted, darted toward the door as if expecting someone to burst through at any moment. "Back where, Lily?" Jacobs leaned forward carefully, keeping her voice even and calm despite the alarm bells ringing in her mind. The child's breathing quickened. Rex responded immediately, pressing his body closer to hers in a gesture that seemed almost protective. The officers watching from behind the one-way glass exchanged troubled glances. "It's okay. You're safe here," Jacobs continued, sliding a cup of hot chocolate across the table. "No one can hurt you in this building. We have police officers everywhere." Lily's gaze dropped to the steaming mug, but she made no move to take it. "That's what Miss Peterson at school said, too," she murmured. But she was wrong. Before she could elaborate, Rex suddenly stood at attention, his ears forward, body rigid. Then, to everyone's astonishment, he began pawing at Lily's jacket sleeve, whining insistently. The sound was unlike his usual alert signals. This was more urgent, almost desperate. "What is he doing?" Sergeant Brooks muttered, moving closer to the window. Officer Wilson's eyes widened. "He's alerting," he said, realization dawning. "Just like he does when detecting contraband or—" He stopped mid-sentence, the blood draining from his face. "Or what?" Ramirez pressed, her hand already moving toward the door handle. "Or when he finds someone injured," Wilson finished grimly. "He's trained to detect changes in human biochemistry, including blood, tissue damage, and even the hormonal shifts that occur with trauma and fear." "Jesus," Brooks whispered, the implications hitting him like a physical blow. They rushed into the room as Lily, with trembling hands, slowly rolled up her sleeve. The officers gasped collectively at what they saw. A series of bruises in various stages of healing, unmistakably in the shape of fingerprints. Some were yellowish-green, fading with time. Others were a deep purple, fresh and raw. Around her thin wrist was a ring of chafed skin, consistent with restraints. Rex had known all along. Somehow, he had detected what no human officer had noticed, the scent of Lily's injuries, carefully hidden beneath her clothing. "Lily?" Officer Ramirez said softly, kneeling beside the chair but careful not to touch the girl. "Did someone hurt you?" A single tear slid down the child's pale cheek. She nodded almost imperceptibly. "That's why you were in the alley? Were you running away?" Another nod, slightly more certain this time. Wilson moved closer to his K9 partner, a mixture of pride and sorrow washing over him. Rex had broken protocol, yes, but for the most important reason possible, to protect a child in danger. The dog's instincts had recognized something that went beyond his formal training. I need to document these injuries, Ramirez said gently. Would it be okay if I took some pictures? It won't hurt, I promise. Curis hesitated, then whispered, There are more. Her voice was barely audible, but in the quiet room, the words landed like thunder. Sergeant Brooks stepped out to call for a female officer from Special Victims Unit and a medical professional to be brought in immediately. The case had just escalated beyond a simple runaway situation. As they waited, Rex remained steadfastly by Lily's side, his warm presence seeming to give her strength. Officer Wilson noticed something else remarkable. The dog was positioning himself between Lily and the door, his body language subtly shifting whenever someone entered the room. He wasn't just comforting her. He was standing guard. I've never seen him bond with a victim like this, Wilson confided to Ramirez. It's like he's appointed himself her personal protector. Maybe he has, Ramirez replied thoughtfully. Dogs can sense things we can't. Maybe he knows something about her situation that we haven't figured out yet. The door opened as Detective Sarah Morgan from SVU arrived, medical kit in hand. As she approached, Lily shrank back in her chair, eyes wide with renewed fear. It's okay, Morgan assured her, keeping her distance. I'm here to help. Nothing happens without your permission, all right? But the truth about who had hurt this child, and why Rex had been so determined to protect her, would prove even more shocking than the physical evidence before them. What they would discover in the next few hours would not only change Lily's life forever, but would transform department policy regarding K-9 units and their unique abilities to detect the most vulnerable victims. And for Officer Wilson, it would raise a profound question. Had Rex simply been following his training in detecting injury? Or had he somehow sensed something deeper? The invisible wounds of a spirit nearly broken by cruelty. The next few hours unfolded in a carefully choreographed dance of procedure and compassion. Detective Morgan, a 20-year veteran of Special Victims, documented Lily's injuries with methodical precision, her experienced eyes cataloging each mark, while her gentle voice maintained a steady stream of reassurance. The medical examiner, Dr. Patel, arrived shortly after, bringing with her both clinical expertise and a kind demeanor that seemed to put Lily slightly more at ease. Through it all, Rex remained a constant presence. His warm body pressed against Lily's side, his alert gaze tracking every movement in the room. When Dr. Patel needed to examine areas that required more privacy, Officer Wilson attempted to lead Rex outside, only to be met with firm resistance. The dog planted his paws, his usual obedience completely overridden by whatever instinct had taken hold. I've never seen anything like it, Wilson murmured to Sergeant Brooks in the hallway during a brief consultation. It's like he's imprinted on her. Brooks rubbed his tired eyes. The question is why? What's so special about this case that it's triggered this response? Could be the severity of the abuse, Wilson suggested, though his tone suggested he wasn't entirely convinced by his own theory. Or maybe there's something about her specifically. Rex has always had good instincts, but this goes beyond anything in his training. Brooks nodded thoughtfully. I've seen working dogs form bonds with victims before, especially children, but nothing this immediate or intense. It's almost like... He trailed off, reluctant to voice the half-formed thought. Like what? Wilson pressed. Like he recognizes something about her situation, something specific. In the adjacent room, social worker Diane Chen from Child Protective Services had finally arrived and was reviewing the preliminary findings with Detective Morgan. Their hushed voices couldn't mask the gravity of their expressions. Multiple contusions? Possible cigarette burns on the upper back? Signs of malnutrition? Morgan listed, her professional tone belying the anger, simmering beneath. And the x-rays show evidence of previously healed fractures in the left radius and 2 ribs. Dr. Patel estimates the oldest injuries date back approximately 10 months. Chen's face hardened as she made notes. Any disclosure from the child about the perpetrator? Not yet. She's terrified. Won't even give us her last name or address. When I asked directly about her parents, she shut down completely. Morgan sighed, the weight of too many similar cases evident in the slump of her shoulders. The only person, if you can call Rex a person, she seems to trust is that dog. The system has failed her before, Chen observed, watching through the window as Lily whispered something into Rex's ear, her small hand buried in his fur. She's testing us to see if we're different. And if we fail that test? Morgan asked, though she already knew the answer. Then she'll never trust authority figures again, Chen replied grimly. And the cycle continues. Meanwhile, Officer Ramirez had been running Lily's description through missing persons reports. She'd expanded the search parameters to include neighboring counties and had been cross-referencing school absence records. At 1:17 a.m., her computer pinged with a potential match. Lily Mercer, age 8? She read aloud, the details sending a chill down her spine. Reported missing 3 days ago by her stepfather, Gregory Winters. Mother deceased. Cancer 2 years ago. Currently enrolled at Westbrook Elementary. Wilson leaned over her shoulder, scanning the report. Says here she ran away once before, about 6 months ago. Found sleeping in Riverside Park. And was returned home by... Ramirez's voice faltered. By Officer Thomas Jenkins from the 33rd Precinct. The name landed like a stone in still water. Jenkins was well known throughout the department, decorated twice for bravery, respected by his peers, active in community outreach programs. His specialty? School safety and child welfare initiatives. His face smiled from posters in school hallways across the district, part of the Officers Are Your Friends campaign. That can't be right, Wilson said, but the doubt was already creeping into his voice. Ramirez clicked through to Jenkins' service record. 15 years on the force, exemplary evaluations. He runs the youth basketball league in his spare time. There's nothing here that suggests. Pull up the body cam footage, Wilson interrupted. From when he found Lily the first time. Ramirez typed rapidly. It's not here. Report says there was a technical malfunction. Convenient, Wilson muttered. Sergeant Brooks joined them, his expression grave. What have you found? Ramirez quickly summarized their discoveries. Brooks listened intently, his frown deepening with each detail. Call Jenkins' precinct, get his home address, and don't tell anyone what we're looking into, he ordered. You think? Wilson couldn't bring himself to finish the question. I think Rex has been trying to tell us something very specific, Brooks replied. And I think we need to find out why a decorated officer would personally return a runaway to a home where she was being abused. But Jenkins might not have known, Ramirez began. Maybe, Brooks conceded. Or maybe he did. Either way, it's a thread we need to pull. Back in the interview room, Detective Morgan had made a breakthrough. She'd abandoned direct questioning about Lily's home life and had instead asked about Rex, noting how the girl seemed to relax when talking about the dog. He knew I was scared, Lily said, her voice still quiet but steadier than before. When I saw him in the alley, I thought he was going to bite me or take me back. But he didn't. He just sat next to me, like he was waiting. Waiting for what? Morgan asked gently. Lily shrugged. For me to feel safe, I guess. And do you? Feel safe now? With Rex's reassuring presence, Lily had finally begun to speak, hesitantly at first, then in a rush of words that painted a horrific picture. When my mom was alive, everything was okay, she whispered. But then she got sick, and after she died, Greg, my stepdad, he changed. He started drinking a lot and getting angry about everything. Did he hurt you when he was angry? Morgan asked, careful to keep her tone neutral. Lily nodded, her fingers tightening in Rex's fur. At first, it was just yelling. Then he started grabbing me really hard and pushing me. Then, she trailed off, her eyes distant. It's okay, Lily. Take your time. He said no one would believe me, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. He said he was a hero, and heroes don't do bad things, so everyone would think I was lying. Morgan frowned, confused. Your stepfather said he was a hero? No. Lily shook her head. The police officer, the one who found me last time and brought me back. He told my stepdad that I needed to be taught a lesson about respecting authority. Her voice dropped, even lower. And then he started coming to our house, a lot. Morgan felt her blood run cold. The police officer kept visiting your home? Why? He and Greg would drink beer and watch sports. Sometimes they'd lock me in my room. But sometimes... Lily's voice broke, and she buried her face against Rex's neck. The dog whined softly, nuzzling her hair. Did this officer ever hurt you, Lily? Morgan asked, dreading the answer. The girl's silence was confirmation enough. When she finally looked up, the haunted expression in her eyes told a story more devastating than words could convey. He said, if I ever told anyone, no one would believe me because he has a badge. He said badges mean you're always right. As if on cue, Rex let out a low growl, his eyes fixed on the door. Officer Wilson burst into the room, his face ashen. We have a problem. Jenkins just badged his way into the building. He's saying he has information about a missing child case and heard we might have found her. The Asku pieces suddenly clicked into place. Rex hadn't just detected Lily's physical injuries. He had somehow recognized the scent of one of their own. A police officer. Perhaps he had picked up traces of standard-issue gear, the distinctive combination of gun oil, leather, and the specific laundry detergent used by the department's cleaning service. Or perhaps, more disturbingly, he had detected Jenkins's scent on Lily herself. A predator's mark. Lock down this floor, Brooks ordered, his voice deadly calm. And get internal affairs up here, now. Jenkins is with 2 other officers from his precinct. Wilson added urgently. They're on their way up. Are they involved? Morgan asked, already moving to position herself between Lily and the door. Unknown, Brooks replied. But until we know for sure, we treat everyone as a potential threat. I need to get her out of here, Chen interjected. If what she's saying is true, this building isn't safe. No time, Brooks said grimly. They're already in the elevator. As if sensing the sudden tension, Rex positioned himself more firmly between Lily and the door, his posture shifting from protective to defensive. A low, continuous growl rumbled from his chest, the sound of a guardian prepared to defend at all costs. Officer Ramirez quickly briefed Dr. Patel and the 2 female officers who had been assisting with the examination. Without a word, they formed a protective semicircle around Lily and Rex. If Jenkins is dirty, we don't know how deep this goes or who else might be involved, Brooks warned. Trust no one outside this room until we sort this out. Wilson unholstered his weapon, keeping it low by his side. What's the plan, Sergeant? We stall. Keep Jenkins talking while Internal Affairs mobilizes. Under no circumstances does he get near that child. The security camera feed on Morgan's tablet showed the elevator doors opening on their floor. 3 uniformed officers stepped out, led by a tall man with salt and pepper hair and a confident stride. Officer Thomas Jenkins, twice decorated hero, community role model, and, if Lily's account was true, a monster hiding behind a badge. He's here, Morgan announced quietly. In that moment, Officer Wilson understood with perfect clarity. Rex hadn't broken protocol at all. He had fulfilled his most fundamental duty to protect and serve by recognizing what the humans around him could not. That sometimes the danger wore a familiar face and carried a badge. And as the sound of approaching footsteps echoed down the hallway, the true test of their system was about to begin. Not just for justice for one terrified child, but for the integrity of everything their badges were meant to represent. Lily, sensing the tension, looked up at Detective Morgan with eyes far too old for her young face. "He's coming, isn't he?" she whispered. Morgan nodded, unable to lie to this child who had already endured so much deception. "Yes, but he won't hurt you. Again, I promise." "That's what my teacher said too," Lily replied softly. But she couldn't stop him. No one could. Rex's growl intensified as the footsteps grew louder. His ears were flat against his skull now, his powerful body coiled like a spring. Sergeant Brooks positioned himself at the door, his hand on his weapon. "Remember," he said to his team, "we're dealing with a fellow officer. This needs to be by the book. Whatever happens, we need to make sure Lily remains safe and that any evidence is preserved." Wilson nodded, a cold determination settling over him. "By the book," he agreed. But the look he exchanged with his K-9 partner conveyed a deeper understanding. Some violations transcended protocol, and some betrayals demanded a reckoning. The night was far from over, and the most dangerous confrontation still lay ahead. Outside the door, Jenkins and his 2 colleagues came to a stop. A sharp knock echoed through the room. "Special victims." "It's Officer Jenkins from the 33rd. I understand you found Lily Mercer. I've been working her case and have critical information." The moment of truth had arrived. And in that small room, surrounded by officers whose loyalty to justice was about to be tested in the most profound way, Lily reached out and placed her small hand in Detective Morgan's. "Don't let him take me," she pleaded, her voice barely audible. Morgan squeezed her hand gently. "Never again," she promised. And as Sergeant Brooks reached for the door handle, the true battle for Lily's future, and for the soul of the department itself, was about to begin. The air in the interview room crackled with tension as Sergeant Brooks opened the door just wide enough to position his body in the gap, effectively blocking entry while maintaining a veneer of professional courtesy. "Officer Jenkins?" Brooks acknowledged with a curt nod. "This is unexpected." Jenkins stood in the hallway, flanked by 2 younger officers. His imposing frame filled the doorway, and the fluorescent lights gleamed off his meticulously polished badge. At first glance, he was the very picture of law enforcement excellence. Crisp uniform, authoritative posture, and a smile that had charmed countless community meetings and school assemblies. "Sergeant Brooks," Jenkins returned smoothly. "Sorry to drop in unannounced. But when I heard you might have found Lily Mercer, I came straight over. I've been working closely with her stepfather since she disappeared." He gestured to a file folder in his hand. "I have her complete history, medical records, and custody information." Behind Brooks, Rex's growl became audible, a low, continuous rumble that seemed to vibrate through the floor. Jenkins' eyes flickered past the sergeant, narrowing slightly when they landed on the German shepherd. "Is there a problem with your K9, Sergeant?" Jenkins asked, his tone light, but his eyes suddenly watchful. "He's been a bit protective of our young witness," Brooks replied carefully. "You know how these dogs get with children." Jenkins nodded, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "Of course. Mind if we come in? Mr. Winters is beside himself with worry. I promised I'd personally see to it that Lily was returned home safely." Inside the room, Lily's breath hitched audibly. Detective Morgan squeezed her hand in silent reassurance while maintaining a neutral expression. Officer Wilson had positioned himself casually near Rex, ready to intervene if necessary, though whether to restrain the dog or assist him remained an open question. "Actually, we're in the middle of processing," Brooks said. "CPS is involved now. Standard procedure." Something hardened in Jenkins's expression, so briefly it might have been missed by someone not looking for it. "CPS? For a simple runaway case? Seems excessive, Brooks." "We have some concerns about her physical condition," Brooks replied evenly. "Kids fall down, get into scrapes," Jenkins countered with a dismissive wave. "Her stepfather mentioned she's quite the tomboy. Always climbing trees, riding bikes too fast, accident-prone." From her position beside Lily, Detective Morgan watched this exchange with growing certainty. Jenkins's casual dismissal of potential abuse indicators was textbook predator behavior. Minimize, normalize, redirect. Her hand moved imperceptibly closer to her weapon. "Nevertheless," Brooks continued, "protocol requires—" "Protocol?" Jenkins interrupted, his affable facade slipping further. "Look, I've been handling this case from the beginning. I know this family. The girl has some behavioral issues, attention-seeking, lying, running away. Her stepfather is at his wits' end trying to provide stability after her mother's death." Rex's growl deepened, and Wilson placed a steadying hand on his harness. The dog's eyes never left Jenkins, tracking his every movement with predatory focus. "Her teachers have reported concerns as well," Brooks said, improvising slightly. He had no idea if this was true, but the way Jenkins's jaw tightened told him he'd struck a nerve. "Teachers see what they want to see," Jenkins replied dismissively. "They're not trained in child psychology or family dynamics. I am. I've taken specialized courses in juvenile behavior and family crisis intervention." Officer Ramirez, who had been quietly monitoring the exchange, tapped something into her tablet. She caught Brooks' eye and gave an almost imperceptible nod. She was fact-checking Jenkins' claims in real time. Brooks maintained his position in the doorway. "I appreciate your involvement, Jenkins, but this is SVU's case now. If you'd like to leave your file, we'll certainly review it and be in touch if we have questions." Jenkins' two companions exchanged uncomfortable glances. One of them, Officer Diaz according to her nameplate, shifted her weight nervously. "Tom," she said quietly, "maybe we should let SVU handle it from here, protocol and all." Jenkins shot her a look that silenced her immediately. "Officer Diaz is new to the unit," he explained to Brooks, his tone condescending. "Still learning the ropes of how we handle sensitive cases involving minors." Diaz flushed, but said nothing more, her eyes now fixed on a point somewhere over Brooks' shoulder. "All the more reason to follow proper procedure," Brooks countered. "New officers benefit from seeing things done by the book." Jenkins leaned in slightly, lowering his voice to a confidential murmur. "Look, Brooks, between us, This kid has issues. Pathological lying, attention-seeking behavior. Her stepfather has documentation from a child psychologist. She's made false accusations before. The statement hung in the air like a noxious gas. Behind Brooks, Detective Morgan's expression hardened, and she pulled Lily a little closer to her side. The girl's face had gone deathly pale. "Interesting," Brooks replied, his tone neutral. "We'd certainly like to see that documentation." "It's all here." Jenkins tapped his file folder. "Along with a signed temporary custody authorization from the stepfather, giving me permission to transport Lily directly back home." He attempted to hand the folder to Brooks, who deliberately kept his hands at his sides. "We'll need to verify all of that through proper channels," Brooks said. "As you know, when there are potential abuse indicators, we can't release a minor until CPS has completed their assessment." Jenkins ignored her, his attention fixed on Brooks. "You're making a mistake here, Sergeant. This is a waste of departmental resources on a troubled kid's fantasy. I've personally verified the home situation is stable." "Like you did 6 months ago?" The question came from Officer Wilson, who had stepped forward slightly. "When you found her in Riverside Park?" A flicker of something dangerous passed across Jenkins's face. "I did my job, officer. I returned a runaway child to her legal guardian. And made some follow-up visits, from what we understand." Wilson pressed, his voice deceptively casual. The hallway fell silent. Even Rex's growl momentarily ceased as the accusation hung in the air. Jenkins' face drained of color before flushing dark red. "What exactly are you implying?" "Just clarifying the timeline," Wilson replied mildly. "For the report?" Jenkins took a half-step forward, his body language suddenly aggressive. "Listen, you've got no idea what you're stepping into here. I've been working with troubled youth for 15 years. This girl needs structure and consequences, not coddling." "Consequences?" Detective Morgan echoed from inside the room, her voice sharp. "What kind of consequences would those be, Officer Jenkins?" Jenkins' eyes darted to Morgan, then back to Brooks. "I'm not going to stand here and have my professional judgment questioned by officers who've spent all of 10 minutes with this case." "Actually," Ramirez interjected, looking up from her tablet, "according to departmental records, you haven't completed any specialized training in juvenile psychology or family crisis intervention in the last 8 years. Your last certification expired in 2017. The corridor seemed to drop several degrees in temperature. Jenkins' expression shifted from indignation to something colder, more calculating. "Computer records aren't always up to date," he said dismissively. "I've done the training." "We'll verify that," Brooks assured him, "along with everything else in your file." Officer Diaz was now looking at Jenkins with undisguised concern. The other officer who had accompanied them, Peterson, according to his nameplate, had taken a subtle step away from Jenkins, creating distance. "Tom," Peterson said quietly, "maybe we should come back with the lieutenant. Do this by the numbers." Before Jenkins could respond, the elevator at the end of the hall dinged. The doors slid open to reveal 4 people, 2 in suits, clearly internal affairs, and 2 uniformed officers from Jenkins's own precinct, including a lieutenant with captain's bars on his collar. "Perfect timing," Brooks murmured. Jenkins glanced over his shoulder, recognition dawning in his eyes. His hand moved slightly toward his weapon, a subtle shift that might have gone unnoticed if not for Rex's immediate response. The dog lunged forward, barking sharply, forcing Wilson to tighten his grip on the harness. "Stand down, Jenkins," called the lieutenant, striding forward with purpose. "Internal Affairs has some questions." What happened next unfolded in a matter of seconds. Jenkins shoved Brooks hard, sending the sergeant stumbling backward. He burst through the doorway, eyes wild and fixed on Lily. "You little liar!" he snarled, reaching for her. Several things occurred simultaneously. Detective Morgan drew her weapon, Officer Ramirez moved to shield Lily, and Wilson, making a split-second decision, released Rex's harness with a single command: "Protect!" Rex launched himself at Jenkins with military precision, targeting the arm reaching for Lily. His powerful jaws clamped down, and the momentum of his attack drove Jenkins to the ground. The officer's service weapon skittered across the floor, coming to rest against the far wall. "Get him off me!" Jenkins screamed, his voice stripped of all authority and bravado. The internal affairs officers rushed in, weapons drawn. "Nobody move!" one shouted. In the chaos, Officer Diaz had backed away, hands raised, while Jenkins' other companion had drawn his weapon, but seemed frozen in indecision, unwilling to fire at a police K-9. "Rex, hold!" Wilson commanded sharply. The dog maintained his grip on Jenkins's arm, but ceased any further aggression, effectively immobilizing the officer without causing additional injury. Lieutenant Garrett from the 33rd Precinct surveyed the scene with grim determination. "Thomas Jenkins, you're being detained pending an internal investigation into allegations of misconduct and child endangerment. This is ridiculous," Jenkins protested, though his struggle against Rex had ceased. "That dog attacked a police officer, and you're taking the word of a disturbed child." "Actually," Garrett replied coldly, "we're acting on evidence collected over the past 3 weeks. Your presence here tonight just confirmed our suspicions." Jenkins's eyes widened in shock. "What evidence?" "There is no evidence." From behind her protective circle, Lily spoke up, her voice small but clear. "The camera in my backpack. Miss Chen from school gave it to me." All eyes turned to the child, including Jenkins, whose face had gone deathly white. "What camera?" he demanded. Social worker Diane Chen stepped forward, placing herself between Lily and Jenkins's line of sight. After Lily's first attempt to report abuse was dismissed, her science teacher became concerned. She gave Lily a modified science project, a small camera disguised as a teddy bear keychain on her backpack. "It's been recording for weeks." Jenkins lunged. Against Rex's hold, his face contorted with rage. "You can't do that. It's illegal surveillance. Inadmissible." "Actually," one of the internal affairs officers interjected, "once we received the initial footage showing potential criminal activity against a minor, we obtained a proper warrant for continued monitoring. Everything by the book." From her position behind the protective circle of officers, Lily's small voice cut through the tension. "You told me no one would believe me because you have a badge. You were wrong." The simple statement, delivered with the unvarnished clarity of childhood, seemed to silence everyone in the room. Even Jenkins stopped struggling, a look of defeat crossing his face as he realized the magnitude of what was unfolding. "You little bitch," he hissed, his true nature fully exposed now. "You planned this." "That's enough," Lieutenant Garrett snapped. "Get him out of here." Internal affairs officers moved in, securing Jenkins while Wilson commanded Rex to release and return to his side. The dog complied immediately, resuming his position beside Lily, who buried her face in his fur. "Officer Wilson," Lieutenant Garrett said, "I believe your K-9 just demonstrated exemplary judgment in protecting a vulnerable witness from imminent threat." The message was clear. There would be no repercussions for Rex's actions. As Jenkins was led away, still hurling threats and accusations, Officer Diaz approached Brooks. "Sergeant, I need to make a statement, she said, her voice shaking slightly. There have been other incidents with Jenkins in juvenile cases. Things that didn't seem right. But he always had an explanation. Brooks nodded grimly. We'll need to hear everything. I should have spoken up sooner, Diaz admitted, her eyes filling with tears. I knew something was wrong, but he's so respected in the department. Everyone thinks he's this great advocate for kids. Predators often are, Detective Morgan said, joining them. They cultivate that image deliberately. It's how they gain access and trust. As the hallway cleared, with Jenkins and the internal affairs team headed to a secure interview room on another floor, the atmosphere in the small interview room gradually shifted from crisis to aftermath. Lily remained close to Rex, one hand buried in his fur, as if drawing strength from his solid presence. Detective Morgan knelt beside her. You were very brave, she said softly. Not just tonight, but all these weeks, gathering evidence, staying strong. Lily looked up, her eyes still fearful but with a flicker of something new. Perhaps the first tentative spark of trust. Is it really over? The worst part is, Morgan assured her. There's still a lot to do, but he can't hurt you anymore. What about my stepdad? Lily asked, her voice trembling. He'll be investigated too, Brooks promised, joining them. Based on what we already know, he was at minimum complicit in the abuse. We'll be executing a search warrant at your home tonight. He'll be angry, Lily whispered. He won't have the chance to act on that anger, Brooks assured her. He won't know about the warrant until officers are at the door, and he won't be told where you are. Social worker Chen stepped forward. Lily, we're going to find you a safe place to stay tonight. Somewhere quiet, with people who will take good care of you. Can Rex come? The question was directed at Officer Wilson, who looked to his sergeant with raised eyebrows. Brooks sighed, then smiled slightly. I think we can arrange something, just for tonight. Actually, Lieutenant Garrett interjected, having returned from escorting Jenkins downstairs. I have a suggestion. Officer Wilson is certified as a temporary emergency placement foster parent for the department's Family Crisis Intervention Program. If he's willing, and if CPS approves, Lily could stay with him tonight, with Rex. Wilson blinked in surprise. He had indeed completed the certification 2 years ago, part of a department initiative to provide immediate safe housing for children in crisis situations. But he had never actually been called upon to serve in that capacity. I'm willing, he said without hesitation. My apartment's not much, but it's secure, and Rex would certainly be comfortable there. Chen consulted her tablet, reviewing Wilson's credentials. Your certification is current, and there's precedent for this arrangement in cases where a child has bonded with a service animal. She looked to Lily. Would you feel safe staying with Officer Wilson and Rex tonight, Lily? Just until we can arrange a more permanent placement? Lily nodded, some of the tension visibly leaving her small shoulders. Yes, please. As the arrangements were finalized, with Chen completing the necessary emergency placement paperwork, Officer Ramirez approached Wilson quietly. There's something else you should know, she said, keeping her voice low. I've been digging into Jenkins's case history. There are at least 7 other cases involving runaway or troubled children that he personally handled in the last 3 years. All of them were returned to homes with previous allegations of abuse that were dismissed. Wilson felt a chill run down his spine. You think there are more victims? Almost certainly, Ramirez confirmed grimly. Once this breaks, there will need to be a complete audit of every juvenile case he's touched. As the adrenaline of the confrontation began to fade, the reality of what they had uncovered settled over the room. Not just the abuse of one child, but the betrayal of the badge itself. Jenkins' actions had violated everything the uniform represented, and the ripple effects would be felt throughout the department for years to come. Later, as dawn broke over the city, casting long shadows through the precinct windows, Officer Wilson sat in the break room, Rex dozing at his feet. The K-9 had spent the night vigilantly positioned between Lily's temporary bed, Wilson's couch, and the apartment door, relaxing his guard only when the child had finally fallen into an exhausted sleep. Lieutenant Garrett entered, carrying 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to Wilson and settled into the chair opposite. "Hell of a night," Garrett said after a long silence. Wilson nodded. "Sir, about Jenkins." "We've been gathering evidence for weeks," Garrett revealed. "Anonymous tips about his behavior with children in the community, inconsistencies in his reports. But nothing concrete enough for a warrant. We needed something irrefutable. And now you have Lily's testimony and the recordings. And a dozen witnesses who saw him attempt to assault a child in a police station." Garrett shook his head in disgust. "The department psychologist says predators like Jenkins often seek positions of authority specifically for access to vulnerable victims. The uniform becomes their perfect cover." Wilson looked down at Rex, who had opened one eye at the sound of their voices, but seemed content to continue resting. "He knew," Wilson said quietly. "Somehow." Rex recognized Jenkins' scent on Lily and understood what it meant. "The K-9 training director has a theory about that," Garrett said. "He thinks Rex might have detected stress pheromones that Lily released specifically when exposed to Jenkins's scent. A trauma response. These dogs are trained to alert to biochemical changes we can't perceive. So when Rex found her in that alley, he wasn't just responding to a child in distress, he was recognizing a specific threat pattern." Garrett studied the dog with newfound respect. "Your partner may have just changed how we approach these cases. His instincts accomplished what weeks of investigation couldn't." "How's the stepfather?" Wilson asked, changing the subject. "In custody," Garrett confirmed. "The search of the home yielded plenty of evidence, not just of his knowledge of the abuse, but his active participation in it. And we found something else." He paused, his expression darkening. "A hidden camera in Lily's bedroom." Wilson's hand tightened around his coffee cup. "Jenkins?" "Installed it himself, according to the stepfather, who was all too eager to cut a deal by giving up his friend once he realized the extent of the evidence against them both." "There will be recordings," Wilson said, the implication sickening him. "Already being processed by digital forensics," Garrett confirmed grimly. "And they'll likely lead us to others. Preliminary investigation suggests Jenkins may have been part of a network." Wilson closed his eyes briefly, the magnitude of the evil they were uncovering almost overwhelming. How did no one see this? "People saw," Garrett replied heavily. "Officer Diaz made a full statement last night. She had concerns about Jenkins's behavior with children for months, but was intimidated into silence. A school counselor at Westbrook Elementary filed a report last year that somehow got lost in the system. Even the lieutenant who preceded me had flagged some of Jenkins's case reports for review, but was transferred before he could follow up. So everyone saw pieces, but no one put it together. Until Rex," Garrett said, nodding at the dog. "Sometimes it takes a different kind of perception to see the whole picture." As the first rays of sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating the dust particles dancing in the air, Wilson reflected on the events of the night. They had confronted not just a criminal, but the darkness that sometimes hid behind the very symbols of protection and justice. It was a sobering reminder that the badge was only as honorable as the person wearing it. And yet, in the midst of that betrayal, something remarkable had emerged. The unbreakable bond between a child who had lost all faith in protectors and a dog who had recognized her need when no human could. In that connection lay the promise of healing, not just for Lily, but perhaps for a system that sometimes lost sight of those it was meant to serve. Rex stirred, lifting his head to look expectantly at the door, as if sensing something no one else could. "What is it, boy?" Wilson asked. As if in answer, the break room door opened and Detective Morgan appeared, accompanied by Dr. Patel. "Lily's awake," Morgan reported. "She had some nightmares, but she's calmer this morning. Dr. Patel wants to do a follow-up examination, if that's okay." "Of course," Wilson agreed, rising to his feet. "I made pancakes, but she wasn't very hungry." "Trauma affects appetite," Dr. Patel explained gently. "It might take time before her eating patterns normalize. The important thing is to offer food regularly without pressure." As they walked back to Wilson's apartment, Rex trotting attentively at his side, Morgan fell into step beside him. "CPS has located a potential long-term placement," she informed him. "A retired child psychologist and her husband who specialize in trauma cases. They have a therapy dog, a golden retriever named Sunshine." "Sounds promising," Wilson agreed. "When would the transition happen?" "Not for a few days at least. Chen wants to make sure Lily is stabilized first." Morgan hesitated, then added, "She also mentioned that your emergency placement certification could be extended if necessary. Apparently, Lily told her this morning that she felt safe for the first time in months." Wilson felt a complex mixture of emotions at this news. Pride that he had been able to provide that sense of security, concern about his ability to meet Lily's needs long-term, and a strange reluctance to disrupt the fragile trust that had begun to form. "One day at a time," he said finally. "Let's see what Lily wants." As they approached his apartment door, Rex suddenly quickened his pace, whining softly in anticipation. When Wilson opened the door, they found Lily sitting cross-legged on the couch, wearing one of Wilson's NYPD t-shirts as a makeshift nightgown, her small face lighting up at the sight of the German Shepherd. "Rex," she called, her voice stronger than it had been the previous night. The dog bounded over, tail wagging furiously as he gently nuzzled her outstretched hands. Dr. Patel smiled at the interaction. "That's the most animated I've seen her," she observed quietly to Wilson. "Your partner has quite the therapeutic touch." Wilson watched as Lily whispered something into Rex's ear, her first genuine smile breaking through the clouds of fear and trauma. "He always seems to know exactly what's needed," he agreed. And in that moment, watching his canine partner's simple joy at reuniting with the child he had protected, Wilson found reason to hope. The road ahead would be long and difficult. For Lily, for the department, for everyone touched by Jenkins's betrayal. There would be investigations, trials, more victims coming forward, and painful reckonings within the system that had failed to protect its most vulnerable. But in this quiet moment of connection between a traumatized child and the dog who had somehow recognized her silent cry for help, there was a reminder of what justice was truly meant to serve. Not procedures or protocols or the letter of the law, but the fundamental human right to safety and dignity. Sometimes, it seemed, the purest form of justice came not from the courts or the system, but from the unfailing instinct to protect those who could not protect themselves. And in that, perhaps, lay the true meaning of the oath they had all sworn to uphold. As Lily looked up from her conversation with Rex, her eyes met Wilson's, and she offered him a small, hesitant smile, the first tentative step on what would be a long journey of healing. It wasn't much, but in that moment it was enough. It was a beginning. The next 48 hours passed in a whirlwind of activity. The Jenkins case had exploded into a departmental earthquake, with aftershocks reverberating through every precinct in the city. Internal Affairs had established a dedicated task force, commandeering an entire floor at headquarters to process the mounting evidence and coordinate with prosecutors, child welfare services, and the FBI, which had joined the investigation once the digital forensics team confirmed the existence of material that crossed state lines. For Officer Wilson, however, the focus remained much narrower and more immediate, creating a sense of stability for Lily, while the adults around her navigated the complex legal and procedural labyrinth that would eventually determine her future. "You're sure this is okay?" Wilson asked Chen for perhaps the third time that morning as they stood in the children's section of a department store. "I'm not overstepping." The social worker smiled patiently. "Officer Wilson, your emergency placement has been extended for 2 weeks. Lily needs clothes and basic necessities. The department has approved the expense account." She gestured to where Lily was cautiously examining a display of T-shirts, Rex sitting attentively at her side. "Besides, look at them. I haven't seen her this relaxed since this whole ordeal began." Wilson nodded, still adjusting to his unexpected role. When he'd completed the emergency placement certification, he'd imagined perhaps housing a teenager for a night or two in extraordinary circumstances, not becoming the temporary guardian of an 8-year-old trauma survivor whose case was rapidly becoming the department's highest-profile investigation in years. "I just want to do right by her," he admitted quietly. "You already are," Chen assured him. "Children who've experienced trauma need consistency and safety above all. You and Rex are providing both." Across the store, Lily held up a purple shirt with a silver star pattern, looking questioningly at Rex. The dog tilted his head, then gave a soft woof that made the girl smile, a small, fragile thing, but genuine. "Did you see that?" Chen whispered. "That's the first time I've seen her make a decision without looking to an adult for permission first. That's significant progress." Wilson felt a surge of pride, both in Lily's small step toward reclaiming her autonomy and in Rex's seemingly intuitive understanding of exactly what she needed from him in that moment. Not protection now, but simple companionship and encouragement. The shopping expedition yielded a modest wardrobe: jeans, T-shirts, a hoodie, pajamas, and a light jacket, along with necessities like underwear, socks, and toiletries. At Chen's suggestion, they also purchased a backpack, some basic school supplies, and a sketch pad with colored pencils. Lily's eyes had lit up at the art supplies, though she'd quickly looked away when she noticed Wilson watching, as if afraid to show too much enthusiasm. "My mom used to draw with me," she explained later, when they were having lunch at a quiet cafe that welcomed service dogs. It was the first time she'd voluntarily mentioned her mother. "Was she an artist?" Wilson asked gently. Lily nodded, using her fork to push a French fry around her plate. "She made beautiful pictures. After she got sick, we couldn't go outside much, so we drew pictures of places we wanted to visit someday." Her voice grew softer. "She said even if we couldn't go there for real, we could go there in our minds." Wilson felt his throat tighten. "That sounds like a special thing you shared." "Greg, my stepdad. He threw away all her drawings after she died. Said they were taking up space. Lily's face darkened momentarily, then cleared as Rex nudged her hand with his nose. I hid a few of them, though, in my special place. Your special place? There's a loose board in my closet. I kept important things there. Her expression suddenly became anxious. Do you think they found it? When the police went to the house? Wilson exchanged a glance with Chen, who nodded slightly. I can find out, he promised. If they did, I'm sure they're keeping everything safe. Lily seemed to accept this, returning her attention to her barely touched lunch. Wilson made a mental note to contact Detective Morgan about the hidden items. They could be both evidence and, more importantly, precious mementos for a child who had lost nearly everything. Later that afternoon, they returned to Wilson's apartment, where Lily immediately settled on the couch with her new sketch pad. Rex curled protectively at her feet. Wilson used the opportunity to make some calls, speaking in low tones from the kitchen, where he could still keep an eye on Lily through the pass-through window. Morgan, the detective answered on the second ring. It's Wilson. Any update on the case? He heard her sigh heavily. Jenkins isn't talking, but he doesn't need to. The evidence is overwhelming. Digital forensics recovered hundreds of images and videos from his home computer and cloud accounts, at least a dozen victims that we can identify so far, spanning back nearly 10 years. Wilson closed his eyes briefly. And the stepfather? Singing like a canary. Claims Jenkins approached him shortly after he married Lily's mother, offering support for dealing with his new stepdaughter. When the mother got sick, the relationship intensified. After she died, Jenkins convinced Winters that Lily was troubled and needed special handling. He groomed the stepfather to gain access to Lily. Wilson translated grimly. Exactly. It's a pattern we're seeing in other cases, too. Jenkins targeted vulnerable families, single parents, foster homes, families in crisis. He positioned himself as a mentor, an authority on troubled kids, then used that trust to gain access. What about Lily's special place? She mentioned hiding some of her mother's drawings in a loose board in her closet. Hold on. He heard Morgan shuffling papers. Yes. The crime scene unit documented a hidden space in the child's bedroom closet. Contents included several drawings signed Laura Mercer, a small jewelry box containing a locket with photos and a journal. Everything's in evidence, but I can request the drawings be released to her. They're not relevant to the case. It would mean a lot to her, Wilson said, glancing toward the living room where Lily was now showing something in her sketch pad to Rex, who was watching with what Wilson would swear was genuine interest. I'll make it happen, Morgan promised. How's she doing? Better, I think. Still quiet, still hypervigilant, but there are moments when she almost seems like a regular kid. That's good. The child psychologist wants to start sessions tomorrow. Dr. Levine, she specializes in trauma recovery for abuse victims. She's agreed to come to your apartment for the first few sessions to minimize disruption. And the long-term placement? Still on track. The Harrises are completing their expedited certification now. They've sent over some photos of their home and Sunshine, their therapy dog, for Lily to see when she's ready. No pressure, just so she knows what to expect. After ending the call, Wilson checked in with Sergeant Brooks, who informed him that he'd been officially assigned to special duty for the duration of Lily's placement, relieving him of regular patrol responsibilities. The department recognizes the unique circumstances, Brooks explained. Your primary duty right now is Lily's security and well-being. When Wilson finally rejoined Lily in the living room, he found her asleep, curled against Rex's side, her sketch pad open beside her. Careful not to wake her, he gently lifted the pad to move it to the coffee table. The drawing caught his eye, a simple but recognizable portrait of Rex, rendered in careful colored pencil strokes, with "My Hero" written in childish script across the top. Something tightened in Wilson's chest. He set the pad down and quietly covered Lily with a light blanket. Rex watched him with solemn eyes, but didn't move, clearly unwilling to disturb the sleeping child. "Good boy," Wilson whispered, gently scratching behind his partner's ears. "You are a hero, you know that?" Rex blinked slowly in response, then returned his attention to Lily, his vigilance unwavering even in this moment of peace. The next morning brought Dr. Levine, a petite woman with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes behind stylish glasses. She arrived carrying a tote bag full of art supplies, therapeutic games, and what she called comfort objects. Small, tactile items designed to help ground children during difficult conversations. "I believe in meeting children where they are," she explained to Wilson as they spoke briefly in the kitchen before her session with Lily. "Especially in cases of severe trauma. Traditional talk therapy can be overwhelming. Art, play, and animal-assisted therapy often provide safer pathways to expression. Rex has been instrumental in her progress so far," Wilson noted. Dr. Levine smiled. I've read the reports. His intuitive response to her needs is remarkable. With your permission, I'd like him to remain present during our sessions. He's clearly a source of security for Lily." The first session was brief. Just 30 minutes of what Dr. Levine described as relationship building. From Wilson's perspective, watching discreetly from the kitchen, it seemed more like play than therapy. Dr. Levine and Lily sat on the floor with Rex, drawing pictures and occasionally tossing a soft ball for the dog to retrieve. "How did it go?" Wilson asked when the session concluded. "Very well for a first meeting," Dr. Levine replied, packing her materials. "Lily is extremely resilient, but she's carrying deep wounds. Recovery will take time." She paused, considering her next words carefully. "There's something you should be prepared for, Officer Wilson. As Lily begins to feel safer, her behavior may actually become more challenging, not less." "What do you mean?" "Right now, she's still operating in survival mode, being compliant, watchful, careful not to upset the adults around her. That's a trauma response. As she begins to feel secure, she'll start testing boundaries, perhaps acting out, expressing the anger and fear she's been suppressing. It's actually a healthy sign, but it can be difficult for caregivers." Wilson nodded, absorbing this information. "I'll be ready." Dr. Levine smiled. "I believe you will. And so will Rex." She glanced toward the living room, where the German Shepherd was once again stationed at Lily's side as she returned to her drawing. "That dog understands trauma response better than most human therapists I know." After Dr. Levine departed, promising to return in 2 days, Wilson received an unexpected call from Lieutenant Garrett. "We need you and Lily at the precinct this afternoon," Garrett informed him. "The district attorney wants a preliminary statement from her, and there's something else you both should see." "Is that necessary?" Wilson asked, concerned about exposing Lily to more stress. "She's just starting to feel safe." "I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important," Garrett assured him. "Trust me on this one, Wilson. It's good news." 3 hours later, Wilson found himself back at the precinct. Lily's small hand clutched tightly in his as they made their way through the building. Rex walked on Lily's other side, his body language alert but calm, providing a buffer between the child and the bustling activity around them. They were escorted not to an interview room, but to the lieutenant's office, where they found Garrett, Detective Morgan, and a woman Wilson didn't recognize. Tall, with auburn hair pulled back in a neat bun and the unmistakable demeanor of a prosecutor. "This is Assistant District Attorney Caroline Hayes," Garrett introduced her. "She's leading the prosecution team for the Jenkins case." Hayes approached slowly, crouching down to Lily's eye level rather than looming over her. "Hello, Lily. Thank you for coming in today. I know police stations can be scary places, but everyone here wants to help make sure that what happened to you never happens to another child." Lily nodded solemnly, but said nothing, pressing closer to Rex. "We were hoping you might answer a few questions for us," Hayes continued gently, "just to help us understand some things better. Officer Wilson and Rex can stay with you the whole time." "Will I have to see him?" Lily asked, her voice barely audible. No one needed clarification on who him was. "Absolutely not," Hayes assured her firmly. "Officer Jenkins is in a secure facility far from here, and he will never, ever be allowed near you again." Lily seemed to consider this, then nodded again. "Okay." The questioning that followed was handled with remarkable sensitivity. Hayes asked simple, direct questions, never pushing when Lily hesitated and taking frequent breaks when the child showed signs of distress. Detective Morgan recorded the session while Garrett observed quietly from the corner. Throughout it all, Rex remained pressed against Lily's side, occasionally nuzzling her hand when particularly difficult topics arose. Wilson noticed that Hayes seemed to be taking cues from the dog, shifting direction whenever Rex showed signs of alerting to Lily's increasing stress. After about 40 minutes, Hayes declared they had enough for now and thanked Lily for her bravery. "You've helped us more than you know," she told the child sincerely. "Is that all?" Wilson asked, ready to take Lily back to the relative sanctuary of his apartment. "Not quite," Garrett replied, a hint of something unusual, almost excitement, in his typically stoic demeanor. "There's someone here who'd like to meet Lily and Rex, someone who's been following their story with great interest." Before Wilson could question this cryptic statement, there was a knock at the office door. Garrett opened it to reveal a woman in her mid-60s, elegantly dressed, with silver hair and an air of quiet authority. Behind her stood a younger woman carrying a leather portfolio and what appeared to be a professional camera. "Judge Harriman," Hayes greeted the older woman with evident respect. Wilson recognized the name immediately. Judge Eleanor Harriman was a legend in the family court system, known for her unwavering advocacy for children's rights and her innovative approaches to cases involving minors. "So, this is the young lady and the remarkable dog I've been hearing so much about," Judge Harriman said, her voice warm as she entered the room. Unlike Hayes, she didn't crouch down, seeming to intuit that Lily might find such an obvious accommodation patronizing. Instead, she simply pulled up a chair to sit at Lily's level. "Hello, Lily. My name is Judge Eleanor. I work in a special court that helps make sure children are safe and well cared for." She turned her attention to Rex. "And you must be the famous Rex. May I?" she asked, extending her hand, palm up. Wilson gave a subtle nod to Rex, who sniffed the judge's hand politely before allowing her to briefly stroke his head. "Excellent judgment," Judge Harriman commented, addressing Rex directly. "That's a vital quality in your line of work." To Wilson's surprise, Lily spoke up unprompted. "Rex knew I needed help, even when I couldn't ask for it." Judge Harriman nodded seriously. "That's precisely why I'm here today, Lily. Sometimes systems fail to protect children, even when that's their most important job. But occasionally, someone, or in this case, someone with 4 legs, cuts through all the procedures and protocols to do what's truly right." She gestured to her assistant, who opened the leather portfolio and removed an official-looking document with a gold seal. This is a special commendation from the Family Court of New York, recognizing K-9 Officer Rex for exceptional service in the protection of a child. Wilson felt a surge of pride as the judge continued. But that's not all, Judge Harriman added. Rex's actions in your case have highlighted some serious gaps in our system, gaps that allowed bad people to hide behind badges and authority. Because of what happened to you, and because of Rex's remarkable intervention, we're implementing new protocols for handling cases where children report abuse by authority figures. She turned to Wilson. The Rex protocol, as we're calling it, will ensure that when a child makes an accusation against a person in authority, specially trained officers and advocates are immediately assigned to investigate, regardless of the accused's position or reputation. That's incredible. Wilson managed, genuinely moved by the impact of his partner's actions. Judge Harriman returned her attention to Lily. Your courage has helped make this happen too, Lily. Because you were brave enough to tell the truth, even when adults failed you, other children will be better protected. For the first time since Wilson had known her. Lily straightened her shoulders, a flicker of pride visible beneath the layers of trauma and fear. Really? Really, the judge confirmed. And there's one more thing. She produced a small velvet box. This is for Rex. Would you like to present it to him? Lily accepted the box and carefully opened it to reveal a special medallion designed to attach to Rex's service harness. The inscription read, "For exceptional valor and compassion in the protection of the innocent." With solemn ceremony, Lily attached the medallion to Rex's harness while the judge's assistant photographed the moment. Rex sat perfectly still, as if understanding the significance of the occasion. Now, Judge Harriman said, rising to her feet, I believe there's a therapy dog named Sunshine who's very eager to meet both of you. Her humans, the Harrises, are waiting in the conference room whenever you're ready. As they prepared to meet Lily's potential long-term placement family, Wilson felt a complex mix of emotions. Pride in Rex's recognition, hope for Lily's future, but also a surprising pang at the thought of her eventually leaving his care. In just a few short days, both he and Rex had grown deeply attached to this resilient child who had endured so much. Reading his expression, Detective Morgan pulled him aside briefly. You know, foster parents often maintain relationships with the children they've helped, even after permanent placement. The Harrises seem like the type who would encourage that connection. Wilson nodded gratefully. One day at a time, he reminded himself. Today was about Lily meeting her potential new family and their therapy dog, a crucial step in her journey toward healing and stability. As they walked toward the conference room, Lily reached up to take Wilson's hand, her other hand resting on Rex's harness. The simple gesture of trust brought a lump to his throat.